Welcome back to another video. Today we're doing a project brought on by a really great student, James Hegel. A great guy because he does email me with suggestions of carvings to do, and I really like his suggestions, including this one, which I've not really covered in this particular way. So we've done Greenman in the school before, but what's different about this one, you can see there's a whole lot of depth in this particular guy's face. And what we're trying to achieve in this project is that sort of hidden inset depth. And that really draws the viewer in. You know, you learn in design class, if you ever take a ceramics class, that you should always incorporate a hidden element and really make that design interesting. Well, what if the main feature of your project is hidden? That's a very interesting and compelling design feature, if you ask me. So, that said, this is not an easy project. Shout out to James again for the design, for the idea of covering it, rather, not the design. This is my design. We're not covering this project to a T. This is just an example of a deeply set Greenman. So let's get into it. Of course, the tools and materials are going to be shown here on the side of the screen as I'm talking. The dimensions of this piece of cottonwood bark very well could be done in basswood as well. The difference is in basswood is you'd want to cover more of the project in leaves or create a texture or a frame for the piece, as you don't want a lot of extra blocky material there that'll subtract from the face. So a little bit more carving involved if you have a piece of basswood or say butternut or any carving wood. All right, so let's get into it. To start, I'm going to use the clearing tool. I mean, if that's a surprise to you, then, well, I guess you're new to the school. That's great. Happy first day to the school, but most of you already know this. First thing, as far as design, speak on that for a moment. I may not talk about that enough. How I decide to place the portrait into the piece of wood. Well, I love to use the rule of thirds. So at first, I'm going to kind of use my hands to kind of get a rough idea of where the face will live. And I like to divide it up into thirds. Okay, I didn't quite get it, right? Let's try that way. Yeah, pretty close. Let's try, and you know, it doesn't have to be exact. Something like this, right? Right about here is where that third lies, right above this crack, this fault line, if you will. So I'm going to take the clearing tool and start right there. Now, cottonwood bark is a dusty material, so it's actually a good idea to wear a mask. More and more as I've been getting into carving, I've been more diligent about wearing my mask. If you're carving outdoors, it's not as big of a deal, but this has been a huge asset to me lately and really helped my respiratory system. I feel like I get sick less. Sometimes I'll throw this on. I'm not going to throw it on in this video because it's going to be hard to understand me, but the product here is a 3M L6503. This is the most comfortable mask that I've found. If you do power carving and you have dust collection, it's still a good idea to wear a mask. Okay, now if you're hand carving and you're roughing in dirty wood, gosh, why wouldn't you just throw a mask on? I think it's just an easy way to protect your lungs. And you know what? You can't get another set of lungs, so why not take care to protect them? All right, now I'm gonna put a paper mask on. This is a 3M paper mask. It's not quite as good, but you know, you'll be able to understand me, whereas otherwise you wouldn't. So it might seem like overkill, but again, when you carve as much as I do for days, you know, every day, producing tons of dust, you breathe that in after a while, it does accumulate over time, so it's better to be safe than sorry. I'll tell you what, you want to protect those lungs because you realize how important they are when they start failing on you. I've had some respiratory issues in the past and it's no fun. All right, so I'm going to use a pencil. You can also use these chalk, let me grab one actually, a chalk pen, or pencil rather, is a great, you can order these online. These are pretty nice to have. Here's one, especially if you're trying to be able to, you know, see what you're doing. I'll draw a line here. Let me just use my pencil again, make sure we're somewhere in the ballpark of this. Yeah, that's perfect. All right, we're in that third. So this is that dividing third, so I'd like to keep it right in there, okay? Now I'm gonna take his face and angle it just to the side, and here, like so. But before I do that, before I get too worried about his face, you know, I've kind of got an idea generally of where I want it to live. I'm going to start to think about the leaves that surround it. And to do that, I might create a leaf here. Now in bark carving, as in any type of carving, you usually start with what sticks out the furthest. And because the leaves are going to sit ahead of his face, we want to start by setting in some of these leaves, especially the ones on top of his head. Okay, I like to start from the top and work my way down. Another element of design that's important to think about here is direction. So each leaf will in effect point to the character, or point your eyes or direct your eyes in a certain way to flow. Bring your eyes into a flow over the piece. So you want to direct the leaves in such a way that you bring the viewer back into the carving. I like to flow the leaves, maybe even turn the bottom ones so that they kind of come forward to give this really nice effect of bringing the viewer's eyes back into the carving. So what we can do here is we can actually take one of the leaves and fold it so that it's coming from the top and folding down. And to do that, I'm going to make a V channel up at the top here. I'm about 2 inches from the top of this piece of bark. Okay, and I'm going to really create a deep, I mean 1.5 inches, because yeah, my tool's about 1 inch wide, so this is 1.5 inch trough, if you will. Okay, big, deep. You can see the relationship of it to my tool. In fact, let me get the camera up there. I'm a one-man crew today, so I've got to make sure I'm getting a good view for you. Okay, big, deep crevice up top. Now this is a leaf that's going to be, again, coming from the top down, curling down. So I'm going to do that, curl that down. And sometimes I'll even use the corner of my tool to create a little groove and then come on the other side of the center of that groove. And this is kind of a really nice quick way of roughing in a leaf is going on either side. That's kind of an advanced technique, but you see how we get that little dimple from the leaf? Now watch this, guys. This is kind of fun. Then I'll make a stop cut at the center of this groove on either side. So I'm taking that big wide clearing tool, that number 3, coming down, and then carving up to it. Okay? Now again, this is good because what this does is it brings the attention of the viewer into the carving. It directs, it points. You know, these leaves are kind of like arrows that point to the design. So if you pay attention to that, I don't know, I think it could really make a better carving. I think it could yield dividends. So I'm going to curl it back even more yet. Curl it forward or downward by just, again, anchoring to that center line, like so. So the real important thing here is that we achieve a sense of depth, a sense of shape, rather, before we get into worrying about any of the design, the leaves, the veining, the center veins, any of the sort of details that make the leaf a leaf, the edge detail, really just working on the shape first. And we'll do that across the whole carving, all right? So there's one leaf blacked in, and I like to make them, I don't want them to be perfectly centered, so I might take one and here's a trick, guys. The bigger your leaves are, the less work you have to do because the leaf takes up so much space that it's kind of less individual undercutting. You know, it's just easier for whatever reason to do one big leaf than it is to do 3 or 4 small leaves. That makes sense, doesn't it? So sometimes if I'm really feeling lazy, you'll notice that I'll make a Greenman with big leaves. So let's go in between. We don't need to make them too small, but we can put one in there. This is another one, and this one's less exciting. It's just kind of directed this way. In the same way that we did before, using the corner of that tool. Now this is a little bit harder with a softer wood. It's going to be a little bit more challenging to get in there with a basswood or a butternut with that corner. So in that case, you might use your V tool to come down the center of that to create that center line, and then a few deep passes, and then you come in with your number 3 1 inch turned upside down, so the curved side is facing down, and then you come in and you cut down into that corner. and you kind of arch that leaf in that anchor of the center. So the leaf curves or turns inward. How about that? Beautiful. Okay, very good. Now. This is overkill. You know, now that we're done clearing most of this material, I really don't need my mask, so I might just pop it off for a second. Oh, I can breathe. You can hear me. Wonderful. Okay, I'm going to take another leaf. You see, we're already getting a lot of shape, a lot of dimension, because we're using the tool efficiently. We're not using all these fancy tools. And really, bark does help you with that, to be able to utilize the tool and articulate it a little bit more easily. But you can do the same with basswood. It just takes a little bit more effort, a little bit more pacing. We're moving less at a time with each cut, not rushing it like I am. Okay, I'm going to do another leaf. Now, this leaf is going to have a little bit of a change in direction. Let's say it's coming over. Let's say it's coming over here. Now, you might be saying to yourself, well, Alec, isn't your face going to be right here? Yes. There's nothing wrong with covering part of the face. In fact, that's kind of part of the beauty of doing the deeply set face, is that it's overlaid by leaves. It looks as though he's sort of, again, hiding. I've done what I've called a hidden Greenman in another video project for the school, but this is honestly, this one used to be redeemed as the hidden Greenman, because that one is, that guy is, gosh, kind of a poser compared to this one. This guy's really hidden. So notice leaf, same process from before. You can use the V-tool. I'll show you with the V-tool in case you're carving in a different wood in front of me. Okay, so we get the veining. I actually might want this V-tool to, this leaf to come underneath another. So I'm just gonna have the edge of one kind of showing up here and tuck this one in underneath it with the flat part of the V-tool, right? And tuck this one underneath. Okay, that's better. Now I'm gonna, again, use the corner of that tool to round that leaf. Stop and relief cut underneath or alongside either side of the leaf, like so. Beautiful. Okay, now our face is going to live at this line, so I'm going to start to think about setting that in. Now, the difference in this project from the others is that face is not going to start to live on the surface. It's going to be pushed in. So I want to make really nice, deep cuts. Really important here that when we go along and stop cut around these leaves, these border leaves that meet the face, we make sure they're deep enough so that we are not going to bust them off when we go to come underneath and remove all this material, which we're about to do here. Okay, so I'm going to start the process of reducing the material to get that face. So I'm coming in underneath. Fair amount of depth here, considerable amount of depth. Stop cut, I'm having to come back and do that stop cut. Otherwise, I'm serious, you're gonna lose that leaf. You really have to be cautious and undercut. Okay, coming underneath there. Man, I've had too much coffee today. I can feel it in this video. Too energetic. Okay, so I'm coming in. Now let's establish a leaf on this side. I'm gonna put a leaf under here. Let's just put it here for now. How about that? Let's just have it coming off to the side. Oh, watch it there, Alec. Watch it there, buddy boy. Sorry about that. See, this is what you get with a one-man crew. You get, this is supposed to be a professional thing, and yet here I am knocking the camera around. What the heck is wrong with me, you know? All right, here we go. Establish the border of that leaf. Now again, the face is gonna live right in here, and that brow ridge is gonna show up. right here, right in there, okay? So I'm gonna still dig yet furthermore, digging in with that big flat tool. I don't know why I switched to this one. I don't know where my flex cut went, but I'm liking this one better. I tend to use the cheaper tools or dedicated dull tools to clear the surface first and then go in with a nicer tool just to preserve it, just to keep that dedicated sharp tool, keep it nice and sharp. Okay, so I'm carving in. I really like to surround the carving with leaves, so maybe I'll even stick one over on this side. Just kind of get to decide where it'll be. Like Bob Ross would always say, it's your world. You get to create it. And you get to decide where the leaves will live. I just kind of want it to be cloaked, surrounded by leaves. That's the main concern that I have. So I'm still going in. I'm carving deep, 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 until I see these these heavy shadows. I've got my light. I've got a light right above this carving, and that helps to, you know, show off the shadows. It's really helpful to have a lamp above your carving project, but pushing that in, getting those shadows to come out is really going to add a lot when that face starts to show up. I'm going to take this down as well. Moving, coming down about, I don't know, 2.5 inches from the leaf set. Let's reposition so we can really see what we're after here. There we go. The dust is flying. And you know, the other thing about found wood is when you're roughing in and you're removing a lot of material and dust is flying, you don't know what kind of molds can be found in those woods that you're disturbing. So it's always good to be on the side of safety and you know, wear a mask, especially if you're doing this all the time. I'm going to keep harping on that in these videos because I want you guys to stay healthy, all right? Okay. So that's that. Another thing to consider, you know, I talk about thirds up, you know, placing the face on the third from this up and down perspective, but from side to side too. You know, if we were to divide the width of this carving up into thirds, that's about right. I want that face to live on one of these intersecting third lines, okay? Not necessarily right in the center. It makes it a lot less boring. So because you know, I might not be able to get away quite with that. So I might kind of cheat and go a little bit off to the side. Still going to be more interesting though if I go that way. So I'm actually going to put the face off on this line, moving more towards this outside edge line, intersecting line. Okay, so let's redraw that in. There's that line. Carve these ones off so it's not confusing. That's the face center line, okay? Off to this outer edge, and that seems kind of counterintuitive, but gosh, it'll make for a much more interesting carving if you can abide by that rule of thirds. At least learn it so that when you're breaking the rule, you know you're breaking it, right? That's what rules are for. At least rules in art are meant to be broken. So reestablish that brow line, and then we're starting to get into the ballpark of depth here where we can really consider setting up for the nose. Okay, so per usual, when I define that brow ridge, I want to remove material from above it because that nose, for it to stick out properly, that forehead needs to come back. So we're going to take that forehead back, maybe, I'm guessing 3/8 of an inch, close to 1/2 inch. Really coming back with that. Right at that forehead line. I'll redraw it in. I keep redrawing it in just because I know you folks are going, where is that thing? And then I'll come in on either side of the center line that I've established. Again, I carved it off. I'll redraw it on. Now that I've established that center line, I'm going to use my gouge to either come across from one side to the other. This is that big number 9. Returning back to this, it's helpful to have a tool like this when you've got not a lot of room to work with. To establish that brow ridge, come across below that line we've just established, set that in, okay? And then I'll come on either side of what is soon to be the nose, giving myself some room, about a half an inch of material at the middle part here. Widening out, notice that it kind of tapers as it comes down. So I'm kind of angling in to get the projection of the nose. Now I'm going to, again, this bark is, you saw in the beginning of the video, the width. Do I even know the width? That's the question. Let's see. About 4 inches. So if that's the case, I'm probably going to make the nose, let's see. Let's do 1 inch and a quarter. How does that look? Well, we can go a little bigger than that. Let's go 1 inch and 3/8. Let's do 1 inch and 3/8. Okay, that's 1 inch and 3/8 right there. So then, if we wanted to find the chin, which we're not going to worry about, but we probably should know at least intellectually, it's going to be double that width. So 1 inch and 3/8 from the bottom of the nose. So we're using that bottom line right there. And I'll use the gouge. I can use this big gouge. Again, this is the 15 millimeter number 9 to come underneath that nose, define the bottom of it. How about that? Okay. And define the bottom of that. And then coming in between, this is really a helpful way of breaking down the face that I wish I would have known sooner. I would have been teaching this years ago, but I didn't know it. The eye socket starts halfway between the top of the brow ridge and the bottom of the nose. So that's why I extended these lines over here. So that eye socket starts here. So we can effectively take that gouge and carve underneath that line, or right on that line, to establish the eye mound. The eye mound, that's where the eye is going to live, right atop of that eye socket line. So I'm going to carve underneath, like so, and begin to establish that line. I kind of like that this eye is mostly hidden by this leaf. I think that's, again, creating that kind of hidden quality, which is really, I think that's neat. Okay. Coming in, sharpening up the transition between this leaf and the forehead, squaring it up. Remember, when you're roughing in a carving like this at first, it's good to keep a little bit of a blockiness, a lot of straight edges to help you to see where there's improper symmetry. It's a lot easier to see inconsistencies in straight lines than in curved ones, because curved ones are so much more ambiguous. It's hard to see where they stop and start. So edges are your friend at the beginning of a carving, and it's really easy to take the squareness or edginess out of a carving. You just keep cutting those corners down, right? It's when we say cutting corners is a good thing. All right, so you can see I've got the 3 planes of the forehead, which, man, if you're not sick of hearing that, you haven't been paying attention, because there's 1, 2, 3 planes in the forehead. You can't really see one very well because it's hidden by this leaf. But what this basically means is there are angles in the forehead that are kind of not totally solidly angles, but that's easy to think about in that way. I like to break them down. See, you can see here, I'll show you. We got this one. How about we change our camera angle? Boom. Got this one angle, and then we got these 2. Notice there's no like flat spots on the head that indicate the angles. I just like to break it down into 3 sections. See that? One's angled off to the side, the other, and then the center. All right, so just to review what we've done, we've established a brow ridge, right, by drawing a line, come down 1 inch and 3/8 of an inch. Made a groove. That's, if you see it, it's actually kind of a U, or kind of a soft V shape underneath. We came in with the number 9, the 15 millimeter, from one side to the other. Then we started to carve a trough alongside that line, the bottom of that line, right? And then we came in halfway between the top of the brow ridge and the bottom of the nose. We created a line, and that's where we carved just on or above that line to create the mound of the eye, which you can kind of see hinted here. All right, now let's look at it from the side view so you can see the depths, because a lot of folks end up creating a dish just here, and they don't remember to blow out the side of the eye socket. So let's look at that part. Okay, we've got my 1/4 inch or 6mm number 9 here. This is that kind of, I like to think of it as like a mid-sized number 9 for this project. I like to have a large, a medium, and a small 9 for a project like this. You know, or Vayner. Vayners are great, equally good. 10s especially. You know, 11s have a bit more of a V taper to them, which is still perfectly fine and usable. So anyway, without trying to get bogged down, notice again coming back halfway in between these two lines with this kind of curve. Starting in the inside corner of the eye. Very important that we get this groove in the inside corner of the eye. In fact, I want to narrow up the brow ridge and come along with that tool over the bridge of the nose, just like so. All right? Really going in a little bit deeper on either side. You can make a little ridge up top here. I don't want to go too deeply up top. I see that mistake made a lot. I really don't want to dig too far in with the smaller Vayners until I've decided where that hood is going to live. So just abstain from getting too concerned with this upper ridge and really focus on the lower one. Trust me. So, you know, once I've done that, just working my way around either side of the bridge of the nose, creating that groove. And I love to have a skew, and that's why I have a skew in this project's tools, because especially when you're working around navigating these tight areas, especially with the leaves kind of hiding things, it's really nice to have the skew to get into tight areas, to clean things up, round hard edges. In this case, what I'm doing is I'm just rounding the edge. I'm just taking that tool and I'm taking off the hard corner and coming back in. Looks like we could actually come in a little bit further, a little bit deeper with the number 9 on this side. Like so. Into the inside corner. Okay, notice what I'm doing here. I'm sharpening up the edge, the bottom edge of that nose, and I did actually do something worth noting, is that when I came around, instead of going straight through with that gouge, I turned the tool up. Let's get a little bit closer of a view if we can. So I came in and around the nose, right? Just like that, like there and like there. Let's get a little bit more light in there, okay? So around. I'm not undercutting, I'm just coming along the side, and what I'm doing here is I'm actually defining the sides of the nostrils. Okay, now we don't want to get too carried away with nostrils just yet because we haven't gotten the shape of the nose. And to get the shape of the nose, I'm going to come on either side of the nose, of the tip of the nose, leaving a bit of material here, about say 1/2 inch of material, or maybe a little less than that, 3/8, say 3/8 of material either side. Turning the tool, the large gouge, the large number 3, see that, flatter tool, 1 inch, or 25 mil, and just coming at about a 45-degree angle to that little plane that we mentioned, this tip of the nose. Let's carve the white off so we can really see it a little bit more clearly. Okay, see that? And this is what's going to give us the shape of the nose, so we can really start to get the dimension. Okay, good. Now we can use the skew to begin to taper the nose transition. From the bridge to the cheek is what Jeff Ferris calls, and I love this term, smooth transition of form. We do not want a sharp edge from the nose to the brow ridge. It just isn't right. Okay, so keep that in mind. And from that side profile, once again, you can see the projection that we got of the nose by pushing that forehead back, excavating beneath the brow ridge line, underneath the eye, that midpoint between the brow ridge and the bottom of the nose, and we talked about earlier the smooth transition to form. Maybe it'll be a little bit more clear here from this angle. What I mean is, as we ski slope down from the bridge of the nose here, this edge, down into this cheek area, we don't want a sharp line here. And a lot of times you see folks, they'll take a V-tool or even their small veiners, and then they'll ride this smaller, steeper gouge up towards the inside corner of the eye. We do not want that exactly. You know, probably could get away with it, I guess, on a gouge of this size, but you know, if you start going into the smaller gouges, you're going to get a very sharp, definite line there. We don't want that, and again, the reason I say it is I see it all the time. So, large gouge here, or I said before, the skew. I love using the skew for this sort of a thing because it really just gets into the inside corners nicely. I'm trying to find it. So as an example, taking that down. Whole host of tools you could use for this. So, very good. I'm going to do that to the other side. And at this point, pretty good depth. We have from the tip of the nose to the cheek. We've brought that cheek down quite a bit. We've gotten that cheek down. Now we can use a veiner to, could use the smaller veiner to define, and this is that teeny tiny, 2 millimeter or, 1/16 of an inch to outline the side profile of the nose. There's the lighting that we needed. Okay, so once I've gone around the nostril flare, which by the way, about 5/16 of an inch tall in this case. Again, that's specific to the individual. You could use a reference photo. In fact, I suggest you use a reference photo. Once I've done that, I'm going to come in with my V-tool, and I'm going to use the sidewall of that V-tool to kind of expose the nostril and remove a bit of material from the edge moving laterally away from the nostril. Do that to the other side as well. Okay, here's what that looks like from this side. We'll try to keep things proportional as we can. Looks fairly decent. In fact, this one might be a little bit too, I'm trying to get my hand out of the way here. Get that light, there we go. All right, just defining that. And a knife or a skew would be great here, just to clean up the surrounding material. I love to set my skew in weird spots. That's what I've learned today. Okay, don't have to use a V-tool for that previous step. You could use the skew here. And I like to form the roundness around the edges of the nostril. With the skew. Like so. Create the profile of the nose, the lower profile, the outline by taking a little bit of material away from the either side of the ball. Just like so. Okay, so his nose is a little wide. A little wide. So we can always just narrow it a bit, like so. Take a little bit off the nostrils. Okay, cool. Now, at this point, you could go above the nostril with my, this is the 6mm number 9. And create a little indent. Now this has a name, I'm trying to remember the name of it. Let's see, supraalar indent or supraalar depression. It's a little indent above the nostril, and I'll show it from the side view in just a moment, but I just wanted to give you a little front view. Okay, so I'm really just separating the ball from the tip, from the nostrils. Okay, and we're also, in doing this, narrowing the bridge of the nose with the skew. Okay. And we can use the skew to take any hard edges left behind from that gouge. And how about that for a view? So what we're doing here, again, coming between the nostril flare and the tip of the nose, and just above it, to create this indentation. And we can even separate, depending on the type of nose that you're after here, the ball and the nostril flare. A little separation there. Okay. I'd like to, since I'm pretty satisfied with the overall shape, of course we haven't done anything to really detail the nose yet, but as far as the overall shape, pretty good. Just take some of the hard edges down with the skew. Round them off, nice. And you can kind of come back in with the skew if you want, make a stop and relief cut to control the, or to, again, define the edge, but you could also just take your veiner, once again, your 2mm, just go back over that line, around the nostril, and just like that, we've got a nostril flare. How about that? These are some beefy nostril flares. I'm going to take the 2mm gouge to begin to excavate underneath the nostril, the actual hole. The nostrils, the opening, I guess is the right word for it. I was struggling there. Words don't always come easy to me. Okay, and that's a problem for a teacher. So I've got to stay caffeinated, I guess. All right, so there's that. Now it's a great time to establish the mustache. I like to do a leaf mustache. I think that's really fun and suits the type of carving that we're doing here. And so we've done this before. Not a huge difference here, except for since it's set in so deeply, I like to really have these leaves kind of fluff out, take advantage of that depth, and have them poof out a bit. So I'm going to draw a line indicating where I want these suckers to be. And we can hold the side view for a minute. I'll show you what I'm doing here. I'm going to make a stop cut going straight in, and then a relief cut up top. Okay, again, we're just excavating, removing material so that the leaves pop. Here's an alternative tool you can use, the 6mm number 9, to establish the transition here. Going straight along the line that we've drawn. Okay, so I'm going to take some off, round that leaf up to the nostril, and let's establish the leaf. Let's pick one. I'm going to make this layer, his left side or right side, be the prominent leaf. It stays ahead of this secondary leaf, which will be underneath. It'll be folded underneath. We don't have to worry about that though. We're just establishing the line of this leaf here. Worrying about that one in a bit. Okay, to avoid the leaf looking like it's coming out of the nostril hole, I will make another stop cut along that nostril with the tool and cut down to it so it looks like it comes below the nostril, not at the nostril. We want it to look like it's growing out from where the mustache would be, not from the nose hairs. Okay, now we can deal with the leaf, this secondary leaf being covered by the left side, or our right side. Okay, this is important to me to not necessarily try and create a leaf where there isn't material. You don't have to, at least. So you can let the material fade, but since we want to get a little bit more depth and carry some of the design down below, I'm going to take these leaves down, both of them. Again, if you had a separate gouge for rough carving, you could pull that out to shape the area beneath these leaves. Okay, so let's define the bottoms of these leaves. And I personally, again, talking about how we like to draw the viewer's attention with these leaves pointing towards the face, I like to curve the leaves. This is kind of an advanced technique. Well, and that's why this is an advanced video. I'm going to make a scoop cup. Now this is a little harder with a hardwood or a non-bark such as a basswood butternut. So an alternative option here would be to use your big number 9 to come along here, moving perpendicular to the length of the leaf, cutting all the way through from one side to the other. And what I'm going to do here is get that shape. It's what we really liked about this other Greenman, is that we had tons of shape, turn of the leaf, really gives it a lot of dimension, a lot of life. As far as I'm concerned, I guess that's my opinion, right? That's what art's about. It's just about opinion, not necessarily about inherent truth. Some people would like straighter leaves, some people like curly leaves. I like curly leaves, so I know, revolutionary philosophy statement there. Okay, so I'm gonna define the outline. Where are my words today? Oh, look at that, we had a little chip, and this happens a lot with these curly leaves. Oh my goodness, it happens all the time. So we don't freak. The trick here is not to freak out too much. You know, if we lose the piece, we lose the piece. In fact, there's a lot you can do to, let's just go ahead and say we don't care, right? Let's try that. I'll give you a way, because, you know, say you lose the piece, it falls on the ground, you can't find it. I will actually just turn the leaf over to compensate for that little break. So just like so, then the accident never happened. I'm going to come along with my big wide gouge and begin to create the veining. And we're going again for that soft kind of V shape on the inside of the leaf. An indentation starting at the center of the veining. And you know, you can use your V tool to create a little groove here for now, just so that you remember where you're at. And then I like to take the 6mm number 9. Again, you know, you're very likely to get some chipping, especially at the surface of a piece of bark like this. It's a lot less stable. So, you know, one thing you can do, and I've seen people do this before successfully, is strengthen the bark with a little super glue. See, look at this. It's flaking like crazy. That probably would have been a good idea to get a thin glue. But I'm coming around the leaf, getting that point, like so, and okay, can use that skew to transition up. Around the back of this leaf. Okay, and notice we're trying to create a little bit of a peak here at the edge. Make the leaf look like it's curling up. That's the goal. We're going to have to dig a little deeper because of the breakage. All right. A little bit more clearly what I'm after. really defining the boundary, the stop cut. This is going to protect protect it from accidental chipping, at least help. Defining the outline of that leaf. And we can come in with a smaller veiner and excavate out a little bit more to really make that curl a bit more convincing. We don't want to make it too thin because then it'll be really fragile, even more fragile than it already is. We're just coming in, creating that upturn. I'm going to actually bring that to a point, this little guy here. Some fragile stuff that we're working with here, so we want to be careful. Take little bits at a time, and this is a great time if you're having trouble for you to stop and take your tools to the strop. Make sure everything is nice and sharp. Make a little groove, indicate that veining coming down, showing people what's going on here. This is a leaf upturned. A little detail doesn't hurt. So I'm going to create a little vein with the veiner. How about that for a use for the veiner? Veining, how about that? Okay, I'm going to go on either side of the two channels that I just carved. Just made two channels right next to one another. And then reducing on either side with the skew to create a raised vein. You can see that underneath. Okay, how about that? Get that leaf curl. Okay guys, and you can continue to do that. You can apply this technique. It's a little bit arduous, but to any of the other leaves, get some curl. I recommend doing that at least once or twice in a Greenman to just give it some extra dimension. Show people what you got. Show them that you have the skills to make a leaf that curls up like that. I don't know, I think it's cool. All right, now since this one's curled upward, I might take this one and gosh, I'm kind of torn. Do I want to curl it upward? We just decide as we go. Let's just decide as we go. I'm going to make a stop cut. This is a stop here, stop along the other leaf, and then a relief cut up to that point. Stop cut, relief. And of course, again, with the bark, you're removing more material than you would with the butternut or the cottonwood. You'd want to take a few more passes with the stop cuts. The cuts are pretty much the same here though, guys, when you're working with butternut or basswood or cottonwood. It's just the cottonwood bark has a certain way of behaving that makes it a little bit more crumbly. And so you can do a little bit more fluid movement of the tool, moving through it, being that it's probably more of a factor of it being softer, really, that you can move through it more easily. Okay, so I'm just defining the shape. And they don't both have to be curled. In fact, symmetry is pleasing, so if you want to go for that route, you can. I oftentimes like to add asymmetrical leaves. I like it to look natural. Call me a naturalist. Why am I laughing at my dad joke? I don't know. We can give it a slight curl forward, but I'm not sure I'm going to give it quite as much scoop as that last one. All right, so a little scoop in there, and we can, again, just do that with the big number 9. This is the 15mm number 9. Come along, perpendicular to the direction of the vein, all the way through, making that curl, a little bit of a fold. And then back in with the V-tool to create that veining, and then use that skew to carve to that veining. Basically, we're carving downhill into that vein to create a soft transition into that center point. Downhill slope. Sometimes I like to use the skew, the point of the skew in that groove, and then push up at like maybe a 45 or slight angle there. We've yet to push the upper part of this leaf below the nostril so that it doesn't look like it's growing out of the nostril hole. So I'm going to do that. Very good. And continue to smooth out this leaf. Make the passes into the center. Bring that whole surface subtly into this trough in the center point here. All right. Very good. So I'm not going to get too carried away with shaping and detailing each of these. Personally, I like to develop all the short forms and shapes and then systemize, the details that I add to them. So for instance, in this case, I'll continue to go down, work these leaves the same way that I have here. And you can carve them as you like. I'll touch on that because I think it's kind of important to touch on a few things about the placement of the leaves. In other words, I don't want to just haphazardly place these. I think it matters a bit, but really it is up to you how you want to place the leaves. It's your world, right? All right, so I said it's up to you, and then I seem to be contradicting myself and saying, that it does matter. So some quick rules about carving leaves. I generally like to keep odd numbers of leaves. Although past the number 9, it's kind of hard to tell if they're odd or even, and the effect is less significant. But just for the sake of giggles, let's try and keep them odd. To be honest, I don't often follow that rule, but it's a good rule to follow. I almost always follow that rule when I've got a figure with less than 7 objects in it. So if I only had 7 leaves, I would try and be cautious of keeping it at an odd number. So 5, 7, 9. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're way past the point, so we don't necessarily need to worry about that. But another thing, I like to keep the movement of the leaves a little bit natural and inconsistent. So I don't want every leaf to be facing the exact same way. And I see that time and time again from folks carving Greenmen. And that is that they like to, once they get a pattern going, they take every leaf and they push it in the same direction. Now notice, the vein really is the direction. Right? It shows you the direction, that center vein. We've got one facing this way. Oh, you can't really even see, can you? We've got one facing this way. All right, we've got another, let me get the focus on there, facing this way. So we've got 1, 2, this one facing down, this one facing off to the side, this one facing off to the side, this one facing off to this side, different directions, and that is important. It's, to me at least. I've seen a lot of people carving leaves that are all perfectly flat and then in the same direction. And to me, it just looks like an unnatural mat of leaves. I mean, I guess if you're trying to carve a green man who's sitting in a pile of leaves, but even then there'd be a lot of changing directions. Each leaf would have its own kind of life to it. So go outside, look at a tree, look how the leaves lay, and they grow from opposite sides of the branch. All right, making our way downtown. Let's do it. Let's add some more leaves. Be careful with this fragile little curl here. In fact, add some glue to that. Might as well protect it, because you'll just as soon knock that off as you work near it. All right, another leaf, huh? Okay, well, let's do it. I'm gonna take one, and speaking of changing direction, let's do kind of a centered one. Since these two are off to the side, I like the look of one that's kind of centered. So let's do that, let's add it. I'm kind of going for a heart shape with this green man. I could have done a lot, and I still could do a lot with these leaf shapes if I want to. In other words, I could still turn these into a different kind of green man. I just go with the heart-shaped leaves because a number of trees have this sort of heart-shaped leaves. These heart-shaped leaves, and it's simple. It's easy to achieve that, and I think it gives a really nice result. Slight alterations to the shape can turn this into a number of different types of leaves. So I like that. I like the utility of the shape. but you can do oak leaves. I mean, I've done an oak Greenman in the school. You can go find that video. One thing we've talked about doing is a maple Greenman, which would be fun. But you know, there is a video in the school about how to carve a maple leaf from the wonderful Sam Loudon. You can see that, and that's going to give you the skills to be able to, you know, do that and apply that to this project. That would slow it down a bit, granted, because there's, you know, a lot of elements that aren't present on the simpler leaf shapes that are there on the maple leaf. But got that one set in. I made this one a little big, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be the same size as these. Again, going for a naturalistic approach. Some leaves bigger than others, just the way it is. Okay, might add another leaf here. Let's do, again, not really overthinking this, but gonna add one here. Okay, so again, I'm using the big gouge to make a stop cut, using the natural turn of the gouge to create that shape, meeting at the tip, the stop cuts, and then a relief cut coming underneath. And then if I can, use the gouge to turn it upside down, get that leaf shape going, just like that. That's satisfyingly quick. Now, if you're not comfortable with that, or you're finding that your tool is digging too deeply in, instead you can just come along with your V-tool, define that shape, that line rather, the center vein, and then come in with a skew and carve to that center line. And again, we're just trying to get that sort of soft V that tapers into the center veining. All right, good stuff. I'm gonna keep carrying these leaves down. One thing you can do too to make this a lot more interesting is you can, you know, create some serious depth. So I can push this leaf in. In fact, the next leaf I might really curl upward or downward. Doesn't matter, it could be downward. Let's do downward, since we've done a lot of curling upward, or some curling upward. So this one, if it's gonna curl downward, we're gonna create a hump by making a stop cut that kind of rolls. So notice the angle of the tool. When I'm coming in, I'm not coming straight in. I'm angling it upward, then I'm carving down. And then a stop cut, rounding it over a bit. That gives us this downward turn. And now I'm going to use the gouge to take the hard corners off or down. And once again, with the veining, just kind of decide where the center of the leaf is. You guys, just like that, you've got a leaf. Well, you're pretty close at least. Don't get ahead of yourself, Alec. But you're pretty close to defining a leaf that's turned downward. We can still give it a bit of indentation there. Coming in, a soft transition. Cool. Continuing down with more leaves. Now I've been doing this for a long time, so I'm pretty quick at carving these leaves. You're going to want to take your time, okay? You don't have to rush. I've got a time slot here I've got to get this done by. I don't have all day like you do. Well, I guess I'm assuming a lot. Maybe you're a busy person. But you can take your time, work on this over the course of a few days. I know I love to do that. Set a carving aside, pick it up, and start again. All right, so trying to be conscious of the direction of these leaves. Let's make one come off to the side. Let's do that. Let's make this guy come off to the side. So a stop cut, a relief cut. Kind of thinking about the direction of that vein, it's coming this way. And let's make this one curled over as well. Why not? In fact, why don't we take the tip of this one as it curls down, let's make it curl forward. So I'm going to use the 6mm gouge to come along the edge. Looks like we got a little chippage. That's okay. Underneath with that gouge. Grab the V tool to really define the boundary or the edge of that leaf, like so. And notice how it kind of looks like it's curling forward at the tip, which I think gives it a dynamic look. Oh, and it's definitely a little bit fragile. So I'm going to grab some glue. Sometimes you'll notice that things will just start to move on you a little bit, and it's always better to be safe than sorry. I'll take a little glue. A thin glue would be better. I'm not sure I even have any at this point in the shop. I ought to pick some up, but just a little bit of this glue at the tip. Don't overdo it. If you have a little, crappy throwaway brush, you can use that to work it in. Let's see, I had one floating around. There it is. I'll just work it in, work it around. Okay, I buy these in bulk, cheap square nylon bristled brushes to apply glue or a paint or whatever I need to do. Hit it with the accelerant. Beautiful. And then we can work around that while it's drying. Like I said though, I'm going to take another leaf, make it curl. Again, using the tool to, using the turn of the tool, the natural profile, to our advantage to curl this leaf downward. Take the 6mm number 9, hollow out on the side of this profile to really give it that effect of curl. Got a little chip out here, so I'll just tighten that curl. Tighten that curl. Now, in nature, would you see a leaf curl this much? It's definitely possible. It might not be super common. If maybe a branch is applying pressure to it, you might see it. You might see this more often in dead leaves. It's truly, if I'm being honest. So there's an artistic liberty in curling these leaves. I think that we have that right, though. I think we do. All right. Curl the leaf in like so. Back with the 6mm. Notice how creating the shadow on the inside. So leaf would be folding in and around like so. Very good. Can establish the veining here. Using the V tool to clean up the transition from this leaf to the upper area that we focused on earlier, the upper leaf above it. Establishing that vein. And using that skew once again. And just go back and forth until those chips fall out. See it flake? Pull that piece off, and then we can decide if we're concerned about it or not. I say we throw it out. I think we're totally fine without it. You know, sometimes it can save you a bunch of time to adapt than to sit there and try and rescue something that's already broken. There's an analogy in life there. Somebody, something is broken in your life, walk away. No, I'm just kidding. Repairing it can sometimes mean letting whatever is unnecessary fall off of you instead of trying to reattach it to your life and make it work. In fact, in sculpture, there's a term called, in sculpture, in life there's a term called chastening, which is a sculptor's term in a way. It means to cut things that don't belong. And in sculpture we do that. We remove everything that doesn't belong in a project, in a piece. And so in life, I think it happens to us that as we go through, we begin to chasten ourselves in a sense. And you know, if you're a spiritual person, you would say that, you know, God chastens you, or life chastens you, or people even. But what happens is things fall off of you that don't belong, and that's a beautiful thing. And so sometimes, you know, it's not worth taking the time to repair, and it's just better to adapt. It's not always the case. Oftentimes it's better to repair. But just bearing that in mind. Okay. Going on to this one. You can see I did something a little different there. I used the number 9 to create that trough, give it a more cupped shape. A little variation is good. I'll come in, my V-tool, define the edge of that, and undercutting is good too. And I love to use the V-tool for undercutting. I'll take the V-tool, turn it on its side, and you can see, again, the point of the tool is going underneath, so you can see here, underneath the leaf, and I'm using it to undercut. I'd like to define the leaf from the outside edge here, at least the tip of it, and so I'll just come along here and create a point, like on the other side, equal opposite angle, and just defining a little edge, and I think that defines that well. And the leaf that's coming over here on the side of the face, we can just flatten that out, make its presence known. So it might be covering part of the face, which again is a good thing in my mind. It kind of gives the carving a mysterious look. So I'm going to come alongside, undercutting this leaf with the skew, undercutting this topmost leaf that we just defined. In other words, taking that skew and cutting up underneath to create a bit of distance from the background in the leaf. Make it appear as though it's kind of floating. Just like that. All right, good stuff. Now we can kind of work back to the features of the face. It's a good time to bring these into refinement, since we've got a lot of the leaves kind of set in place. That's why I've got the focus here on the face. The deepest most part of the face is typically the outer edge of the eye, and then the second deepest most is the interior corner of the eye. So I'm going to use a gouge. I'm actually going to look for it because I'm not seeing it right here. Here it is. Nope, that's not it either. Looking for a 2, 3, well, more like a 3 millimeter gouge, and that does make a difference from the 2 millimeter or the 1 millimeter that we're using now. That's just kind of in between the two. Show you what I mean. So these are the two we've been using. Okay, and we want, there you go, you can see those clearly. We want one in between in terms of size, so that we can really get in that inside corner without making it too sharp of an edge, but still able to excavate out. Right. All right, so look at that nice deep indentation, bidet. I'm going to come alongside. Now, as far as the width of the eyes, you might be saying, Alec, how do you determine the width of the eyes? How wide should these eyes be? Well, there's kind of a simple way of determining that, and that is to have the ability to fit a half eyes width at the outside edge, full eyes width in the eyes area, about an eyes width in between. And so you're going to kind of use that as a guide. So from the center point, you should be able to fit half an eye's width to the inside corner, a full eye's width, and then a half an eye's width again. So that kind of gives you an idea for both the width of the face and the width of the eye. Okay, and if you're struggling with the scale of your face, how wide, how tall should it be? I like to tend to use the rule of thirds as we talked about in the beginning, and that helps to give you a sense of scale. Just make sure that if you take the overall distance of the face from top to bottom, if you kind of estimate it, it should be about 1.6 times the width of the face. And that is, my friends, the golden ratio. If you've ever heard of the golden ratio, 1.6 to 1. And that's the ratio of the face, the ratio of beauty. Okay, so I'm just now taking that corner off that we created incidentally with the medium in between small veiner. This, I believe this is a 3mm veiner. I can check on that. Let's see. Well, you know, I've only used these tools for most of my life, so I'm still trying to remember how many mils these things are. Might be closer to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. No. Yeah, about 4, 3 or 4 millimeters. Millimeters. It's early here, guys. All right. Beautiful. You can see the eye mounds are really starting to come into shape. Wonderful. All right, I'm going to take the hard edge off of the brow ridge using this skew, held at about a 45-degree angle to the brow ridge, and coming back down around the brow, like so. Bada bing, bada boom. Apparently I say like so a lot. I'm told that by you guys on the internet. I don't know why, it just comes out. Excuse my head. I don't have a fancy cameraman. So I've got to, you know, get in the way of the camera occasionally. I don't like to, but I have to sometimes. Excuse me. Okay. All right, beautiful. Oh, I'm loving this. Looking good. Okay, let's take our now larger 6mm veiner, if that's even true. Yeah, it is, about 6mm. And let's come along and define the edge of the eye and create a half eye's width at the edge here. Getting a little hyper, can you tell? All right. So I've done that, and the width I've got here is it's a little too wide. It's a little too wide, so I'm going to narrow it up. And for your reference, let's see. Well, I take back what I was about to say. I'm just narrowing that face. Narrowing that face. How about that? Oh, and I should have created a leaf on the side here, and I guess I still can. So that it feels like it's set in. There it is. Let's put the leaf right there. Just coming along with the V tool along the side, just creating a little groove along the side of his face. taking off the hard corners at the sides of the face and softening the transition from the cheek to the leaves, or his mustache, his leafy mustache. All right. It's a great time to pull up a reference photo, if you have one, to get some ideas for the refining shapes, the shapes of the eyes, the shapes of the more delicate, nuanced features. Now let's go ahead and create a little indentation in the center of his 2 region, right? This flat plane in the center of his forehead. I'm going to use a number 3 flat 1-inch or 25 mil gouge like so to come across. And then I'm going to create a scooping cut over the bridge. And I want to create a little ridge here, like a bump. And to do that, you can also use a gouge. You can use your 15 millimeter. If you can sneak it in there, depending on how tight you got that face shrouded, you can kind of hint at it most of the time. I'm going to use that to hint at it. And then I'm going to blend. And that means I'm going to take the skew and reduce the material atop that ridge to create, again, this prominent bony ridge. That is the brow ridge. How about that? We're cooking now. Now we're cooking with gas. How about that? I don't know what mood I'm in right now. I guess I'm still coming out of vacation mode. I just got back from Montana. I was collecting bark material. In fact, I picked up this piece of wood while I was there. I'm not sure if I found this piece or if I bought it, but I went to many different spots off the side of the freeway looking for bark. Previous spots I had looked before, and I ended up finding quite a bit of bark. My wife and I did. We collected it, and we're pretty well set on bark. But I did end up buying some from a friend while I was out there as well. A couple of the really big pieces. Maybe, I don't know, 10 or 15 of those. Anyway, I'm just coming back from that, and it was a workcation. You know, that's how my vacations often end up being. I travel for teaching, I don't travel as much for teaching, but I used to travel for teaching, and then I'd turn that into a little trip somehow if I could. Even if it just meant having some fun after the class was over, going to a restaurant, exploring a little bit. It's a workcation. You know, and with collecting the bark, you can allocate a whole extra week or so, or a few days, not quite a week, to enjoy yourself a little bit. So my wife and I did. We went to Bozeman. We explored Bozeman, which if you've been to Bozeman, Montana, you know it's a very beautiful place. I enjoyed it a lot. I recommend it. Okay. So you can see the shapes are really starting to come into view here, and the refinement of his face. That brow ridge makes a big difference, the bony brow ridge. You can see the bony structure of his forehead almost coming through. And here's the skeleton you can see on that, and I'd like to get a different skeleton too eventually, but you can see that bony protrusion right here. You can feel it, you know, and you can see it from the shadows. Right? That's what we're creating there. Quick sip of coffee. Okay. Now I'd like to define the expression or the specific countenance of this wood spirit. So how is he positioned? How's he feeling? What do we got going on here? What's his story? Could go with a lot of different directions here. I love carving the closed-eyed Greenman because there's something serene and mystical about a sleeping Greenman as opposed to a awakened or woke. I don't think that's the right term anymore. All right, so I'm going to do a sleeping Greenman because I really enjoy those. And, you know, some of you in the comments might say, Alec, I really want to see you make this into an opened eye carving. Guys, I can't even do that. Comment in this video below, and I will take this carving, if I haven't sold it by then, and open the eyes. If you'd like to see both variations, it's absolutely fine. Okay, so I'm drawing a smile on either side of the eye, and I'm centering it slightly below. No, I'm placing it, sorry, slightly below center, my words. So if I were to draw a center line on this mound, notice I'm just below that center line. Okay, isn't that nice? That chalk marker really shows up nicely. So, you know, I've had these in my drawer for months, years, I don't know how long, months, but, you know, and I've used them before in previous carvings, and I've had many students using chalk pencils, but I always forget to pull them out. So I'm going to take the veiner. This is the 4mm veiner now, so that one that we grabbed just a few moments ago. I'm going to come underneath that line, just establishing this kind of smile, if you will. All right, this is so simple. I love how simple this is. Same thing on the other side. Let me get my hand out of the way. Getting that line defined. And I mean, you can already start to see the life in his eyes. I mean, it's subtle, but it's there. So then I'll come in with the larger 6mm number 9, and I'll carve underneath that eye. Okay, so I'm going to push that lower lid underneath, because that lower lid kind of tucks up and underneath that upper lid as it cascades over. Because that upper lid does protrude a little bit more, being that the eye mound is set up and in the eye socket, not just kind of squared to the eye socket. Okay, or to, you know, perpendicular, or sorry, parallel to us. It's more of like set up and in slightly. So then I'll come in and I'll really define the roundness of the eye by taking off some of the material from the corners, inside and outside, with that number 9 6mm. I know it seems counterintuitive because, oh, Alec, you're creating this little indentation, this groove on an eye mound. Well, we have this little indentation where the eyelashes meet the lid of the eye, and this will actually kind of indicate that eyelash area, which is kind of a fun thing. So I'm just going along the border of the top of that line. If need be, which it's needed, we need be, take this line and reestablish it with the V tool, the lower line. This is that original line, the line of the lower lid that we created just a few moments ago, the first step of this closed eye thing. Okay, coming underneath, really sharpening that up, so we're clear between that veiner groove we just created, creating the eyelash area and the separation of the lower lid to the upper lid. Okay, now we can really come in and tuck that underneath the sharp V groove using the skew. Tuck that lower lid underneath the upper lid. Okay, just like so. And, you know, absolutely pull up a reference photo of a man or woman with closed eyes. Probably man, because in this case we're carving a man, but that'll just make a world of difference, being able to see the structures. Because it's one thing to copy me, because at best you get a second-rate version of what I create, but so much better to use an original photo alongside of this tutelage, because then you can stop and then you can compare your carving to that reference photo as well as these steps, and then you can get something that's completely unique from mine. I think that's the real golden scenario, when you can combine both the instruction and the steps laid out in these videos with the unique qualities of actual reference imagery. But what do I know? What do I know? Okay, rounding the mound of the eye over on this side a bit as well, because we're looking a little bit flat over here. Tucking in this inside corner, rounding the mounds of the eyes. And again, the skew is great for that, because anytime you see flat area, you just come in and take that angle out, or you know, take that flat area out. Life is so precious, guys. I'm thinking about today, my friend, you know, as I've gotten older, we've had friends get sick, and you know, I'm coming into my 30s now, and the way things are, you know, younger people are getting sicker, and I don't know what that is, but my point is that life is so precious, and when you're capturing the likeness of a human being, you realize the fragility of our lives. Sometimes thinking about the human form, I think we carve human beings, at least I do. I can't speak for you, but I carve human beings because I am so passionate a people person. Not all of you are, and that's okay. You don't have to carve faces because you're a people person, but I am, and I love the community that I have in my life, and it's just so important, I think, to be grateful for that community and to value the friendships that we have. I think most people don't value the friendships they have enough, and I want to be better at that, and I appreciate those people who have showed up in my life. If you're one of those people, thank you, and have been a supportive entity in the pursuit of this career, and also just in my life, in my personal life, my wife, my family. It's a fantastic career to have been able to pursue, and it's only possible due to the awesome support of my family. And yeah, so I'm just grateful. I'm grateful for the life that I have, the health that I have at this time, and I think that's something worth taking a little time out when you're carving, just to sit and be thankful, or to stand and be thankful in my case, for what you have, your health, those loved ones in your life, even though everything isn't perfect in your life. Being grateful for what you have. Okay, so what I'm doing, just coming alongside the bottom of the eye, getting the roundness of that bottom base of the eye, and actually could come in with that 4mm veiner along the base, like so. And I'm going to get a closer shot here, guys, while I'm doing this, because I just think you need it. Okay, coming along the base of that eyelid. Look at that. Cool, right? I got out of the way here. There we go. And what I love about carving Greenman is, say we get sort of tired of carving the face, or maybe we want to take a break off of the face so we can focus on other things. We can do that, and I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to pull out and come back to the leaves, and we can begin to refine those, and then we'll do some final touches on the face, all right? I want to spend a little time working on refining these leaves, and to do that, I'm going to really go through and consistently establish a center vein, all right? Now I'm going to use a V-tool for this. I love the V-tool that I use here, this nice deep V-tool. This is made by Stubai. It's called a 47. I love the fact that it's got these really nice steep sidewalls. Now, I use the sidewalls a lot to shape, especially in these leaves. I'll turn the tool on its side, like so, and then let the side cut the transition of the leaf into the center. It's just a handy thing to have, that extra wide side. In fact, sometimes it does get in the way, but it's nice to have in general. It's nice to have options. I would have one of these and then a V-tool with shorter sidewalls to get in tighter areas. Okay, so I'm going to come underneath these leaves, begin to undercut. Now I'm using the V-tool to undercut because it's kind of a two-step in one type thing, where you could go in with a knife and make a stop cut and a relief cut, and that would be great, and in some cases it's kind of needed to get in tight areas where you can't fit the whole width of the V-tool, but this is just so much easier. So coming in, undercutting, right? I like to bring the leaves to a point, the edges rather, to a point. If I need to come up top and clean up this top line, I can do so with the top, the flat part of the V-tool. Again, that's the beauty of the top part of the V-tool, or the side walls rather, having this nice length or height to them. You know what I mean, these side walls. Then come in here, come underneath. Oh, watch me bump things. That's why it's important to have nice resistance from the non-dominant hand, the left hand in my case, because I'm right-handed. Pushing back on the tool, providing control, because things like that happen if you let things get out of hand. You don't want to rely on the wood to provide the resistance, because that will be inconsistent and you'll lose control of the tool. So I'm going to come underneath here with the V-tool. Notice how I'm just making passes slowly, because otherwise if I push too hard or trying to remove too much at once, I'm liable to break that leaf. So I just want to slowly kind of inch up on it, creating an undercut to make that leaf nice and thin and airy looking. Now in reality, we don't actually have to go so far underneath to make the whole thing thin. It's most important that we come in a bit and then make sure that edge is nice and crisp and thin. There's not a big thick border around that edge. So we want to, in other words, taper or chamfer that edge to a point. I'm just going to keep going. Now you can use, you don't have to just use a V-tool for this. It could speed things up as well if you got a nice big section of material that needs to be undercut. You can also use your gouge for this. Right? For instance, if I've got my 6mm gouge and I really need to hawk out a lot of material, I'll come through and clear it out, and then I can refine it with the V-tool if need be. But sometimes that number 9 or a veiner can get in there and do a lot of damage in the best way. See, here's this 4mm veiner. Come in with that. All right. Back to the V-tool. Okay, you get the idea. I'm going to do that to the rest of this carving and we'll come back. I'm not going to bore you guys by undercutting every leaf. You can kind of get the idea of what we're after here. Okay, I've gone through and undercut the leaves. I'd like to take a moment here to show you how I detail the leaves. It's going to be another scenario where I do a detailed leaf and then continue that pattern off camera because, again, I don't want to bore you guys. I'll do a couple just to make sure that it's solid. The idea is solid. And but I don't want, again, I don't want to spend, you know, a half an hour detailing all these leaves for you on camera when it's really the same process over and over again. So I think most of you would agree that that's the best way of going about this. So focusing on this guy right here, I'd like to start by making sure that my trough is nice and centered on the leaf. You know, many times I'll end up taking a step back and looking at my leaf and it's off to the side, way over one way or the other. So make sure it's symmetrical on both sides. In this case, you can only see part of this leaf. It kind of fades off, so it is more symmetrical than it looks in terms of the available material, but we have to kind of imagine in this type of carving that we can see the rest of the leaf back here. And then if you do see that, you can see that this is centered. Anyway, you get my point. Now, I'm going to start from the base, work my way, slightly heavier line at the base. What I'm doing here is I'm making sure that everything is nice and smooth and prepped. I don't want to add, worst thing I can do is add detail to a leaf before the form is kind of defined. So if there's any big lumpy spots, I'll come through and smooth that out. You know, I used to sand leaves before I did the veining. I don't do that as much now because I'm more confident in my knife abilities. But if you're not confident in your abilities to use gouge abilities, if you're not confident in your gouge abilities or knife abilities, depending on what tools you're using, you would want to do some sanding just to make sure that this surface is repaired, it's ready, it's good to go. The problem is with adding detail to a really rough looking leaf is that you're going to have to carve all that detail off anyway. So I'm just coming through, I'm making sure the surfaces are clean, nice and even, and then yeah, that's that. I'm going to come through, start the veining process. All right, so again, I'm starting with a heavy line at the base and then thinning. So I'm applying a little less pressure and a little bit less aggressive angle inward. So I'm kind of lifting up. And a little bit of a subtle S-curve will make for a really nice line. So that's, I mean, gosh, when I say subtle, I mean very subtle. So we're coming upward a little bit and then downward at the end. Just like that, all right? That's my vein. And I'll do one more. And the spacing here, I'm gonna say it's about 3/4 of an inch. That's my guess. You know, I could always measure for you just to see. A little bit less than that, about 5/8 of an inch. Okay, I'm gonna stagger the next set. So the next set I'm gonna start just below, So I'm going to come in like so, and then out to meet the line that I created. Now the reason I'm doing it this way is because I want to stay out of the range of the camera so you can see what I'm doing. But normally I would start up here. I guess that still works. Try to create that. All right. So those are my veins. I'm going to go ahead and do that to the whole thing. Could show you another one, but again, it seems kind of redundant. So again, prep that surface. Good. Nice. And come in with that V tool. If you're starting in this direction, which you can, I'm going to start shallow and then get deeper as I go in. And if we made it too deep, like I think we did, you can always take the side of that knife and reduce it like so. Okay. There's our veining. Boom. And we're only seeing a part of it, so we can just kind of hint at it there and there. All right, I'm going to continue this across the whole thing. All right, just wanted to give you a peek at the results of the veining. You can see here that the details have been set in with the V-tool using the same pattern we did before. If I sound a little different, it's because over the course of the last day or two since I did the last section of this video, I have contracted a virus. Anyway, I'll be all right. This is our next stage, the face. We want to work on refining the face, getting that dialed in. Once that's done, we have an option of refining the leaves with some sandpaper. I might do that, just lightly touch and blend the edges, but really I like to leave a contrast between the face and the leaves, so I'll definitely put more effort into sanding and refining the face. It's your choice though, if you'd rather keep the face rough and use the sandpaper to smooth the leaves more so than the face. The important thing, at least to me, is the contrast, is to have the ability to have multiple textures showing up in a carving. To me, that really makes a carving much better. All right, to the face we go. All right, so we're not too far off from where we need to be on this face as far as getting it to a place of looking good, naturalistic, and good. It's already pretty close. One thing that I mentioned in the video that I'd like to refine, maybe I didn't even mention it in this video, are the eyebrows. And to do that, we've kind of done the first stages with it, which is to create the brow ridge, which is kind of a bony protrusion, but some of that ridge is going to be used for the hair. So thankfully, we've already done that. In other words, we've come across the top of the brow ridge, reduced material, and I'm going to define a little area for hair. So to do that, I'm going to kind of decide where the hair is going to exist and use my 1/8 inch, number 9, which is actually, I think it's a number 10, doesn't matter. Point is, anything like that'll work. 9, 10, seriously, not a big deal. Gonna go around, define that, see if I can get the light in there. There we go, there it is. Now you can really see. Define that groove, like so. And then come alongside here. Now the hair of the eyebrows, it's not so much living atop the eye as it is on this interior edge. So a mistake you can make, is create too much of a, too much hair on the top of the eyebrow ridge instead of on the inside corner of it. So it's on the inside edge. Keep that in mind. Show what that looks like here. So I'm going to start with some up and down grooves, straight up and down, and then work to some angled ones. Okay, so I'll do a few of those. And sometimes I'll actually use the gouge turned on its side to create the eyebrows and almost scratch them in. Okay, so more up and down, slightly angled here. And then as we move outward or laterally, we're going to angle more. Notice that my strokes are becoming more angled off this way. So we start up and down, and then the hairs slowly, as they move outward, angle like so. Okay, so give them some bushy eyebrows. Really giving them some bushy eyebrows, and that's fine. And we can always take some in. I'd also like to reduce a little bit on either side, more on this side because we can't really access this as well. Reduce a little bit of material on the edges, the edge of the eye, the outside corner. This is actually, I'm using a tool that I shouldn't be using because we don't necessarily have it in the tool set. Really the 10 is going to work great for this, sorry, the 9. This is the 15mm 9 would work fine for this as well. Grabbing that skew, cleaning up that edge, and you can see how those hairs are formed. Now you can also just go ahead and use the smallest of the veiners that we're using here, the 16th inch or whatever it is, 1 or 2 millimeter, like so, by coming in with the grooves. Just to show you it's not a big deal which one you use, I'll use both. Remember the inside of that edge, so we're going to come on the inside, not just the top here, but the inside corner. In other words, all along this angle of the brow. So the hair, in other words, follows the inside angle. I think I've said that enough. All right. Sorry for bumping the camera. And then, if you need to break up the edges, which I like to break up the edges, in other words, the stark line created by that gouge, I'll usually use the gouge to create a couple of separations, solid separations between the groupings, like so. Okay. Just like that, we've defined the brow ridge. We can also take the skew and, excuse me, remove the material from the other side of the gouge cut. And just like that, I mean, so simple, so straightforward, right? And we've got some nice eyebrow hair. Now, I did this off camera. I don't know why I did this off camera, but I can re-illustrate the nostril. But I did want to show you how I carved these out, even though we've done it in other videos. I just came in with the 1/8 inch 9, or 10 in this case, and just come out, excavated to the edge of the nostril, moving towards the tip of the ball of the nose. All right, so we'll just start to cut into that ball on either side, pointing. I like to think of the nostrils as sort of pointing to the tip of the nose. So they don't go all the way to the tip of the nose. I wouldn't keep carving a hole all the way up into the tip, but I'm moving towards that, like so. And then I'll take my skew, because I created a sharp edge, and there aren't really sharp edges in nature, especially in, there are sharp edges in nature, that's not what I mean to say, but there aren't very many sharp edges on the face. I just made up a rule that isn't true. Okay? Beautiful. Okay, I've chosen this angle because it really illustrates that we need to pare down the cheek a bit. There's a lot of mass. I'm going to take it down just a bit. We could have a fuller faced dude, that's totally fine, but I want to give it some structure. So I'm using the skew to round it off. Not as much to do on this side because we've got the leaf covering it, which is kind of nice. A little bit of carving around the face, but this sort of lives in the shadows, so can get away with a little bit less detail there. But coming along the edge, this profile, narrowing it down, that already is a little better. I'll create a soft groove. Groove from the inside corner of the eye down, I'll just draw it in, down to the hollow of the cheek, beneath the cheek hollow. That's called the mid-face groove. I'm just gonna softly allude to that. You could start with I like to start with a big gouge. Doing the same thing on this side. I like to start with a big gouge, and then I work to a smaller gouge. So I'll probably I'll work to the 3mm, or the 1/8 inch. going into the inside underneath the lower lid, like so. Right, and that adds some, you can see what that did to add to the fat pads of the face, because there are fat pads that are as important as the muscle and skeletal structure, because they do affect the surface of the skin, the shape of the skin. So if you haven't already, look into fat pads. You'll see a lot of information from plastic surgeons on the topic, and it will help you to understand where the mass lies on the surface of the face. And I've been learning about this recently and haven't really paid much attention to it in a clinical, sense of learning where they are. But what I found was I've already been carving them all these years because of noticing them on people, and that's the beauty of carving from references or carving from real people, is that you'll notice all these things that you don't even necessarily aren't even cognizant of until after the fact. So you can get the knowledge without necessarily having or understand the shape rather without having the knowledge to back it up. So ultimately reference photos are most important, but if you can, why not learn a little bit about what it is that you're carving so that you have some background, and it'll just stick better in general, the information that you learn about the form. Okay, just coming in, cleaning up. We can leave him a little bit rounder face, leave him a little bit extra mass. Maybe he's a heavier dude. Why not? Not everyone has a gaunt face. We've done a lot of gaunt faces, and folks in the school have even mentioned, why don't we carve more heavier faces? So we can leave in a little extra mass there. I don't think that's a problem. I actually like that, little rounder face, fuller face. Now I'm going to use some sandpaper. Talked about sanding. I don't do a lot of sanding as much as I used to growing up, and in the last even 10 years as an adult, I've really done a lot to reduce the sanding, and I think that just comes with experience. I'm going to throw a mask on. You'll still be able to hear me because, excuse my coughs, guys. I'm going to put on just the 3M paper version, but all right, so I've got some 320 grit. I'm not using an aggressive sandpaper because, again, I don't like to heavily sand carvings as I used to. I like to leave some of the natural shape in place, the natural shapes that the tools leave behind, so the gouge marks, in other words. I want to see those. But nonetheless, I still will do some sanding. I think it's good to clean things up a little bit. Not always good, but... And this is really opinion oriented. This is where your style comes through. I mean, there's a lot of points in which your style comes through, but this is one of the many points. You don't have to sand. But to me, sanding really brings, even just a light sanding can really bring out the skin-like texture in wood, blending those cuts a little bit. So I'll stay away from the eyebrows because I like the contrast of the texture of the eyebrows to the smoothness of the skin. That's for sure. We'll just go along the forehead, go along the head, folding the sandpaper up. I like to fold the sandpaper up because, to me, the sandpaper is an extension of your carving tools. It reduces material as well as the carving tools do, just on a smaller scale. So you really want to be thoughtful about the way that you use your sandpaper, and that's why I like to fold it up into very specific shapes and use it in the crevices, not just to smooth over the details, but to accentuate those that we've worked so hard to capture, and even to create others. So it's not the time to turn off your reference image if you're using one. It's the time to really look closely and see what you might be able to add the final stages. Okay? So anyway, that's that. We've done some nice sanding. You can get carried away with that and do more. I'm going to just very lightly touch the surface of the leaves, and especially focusing on the edges. As I come along the edges, I really improve the leaves. At least I've noticed. I like to, again, lightly touch the surface. Really nowhere near as much sanding as I'm doing on the face. Let me pull out a little here. Lightly going over that. Maybe getting a little carried away with sandpaper here. Remember to keep it light. Just going over the shapes. Trying to remove any hairs or fuzzes. Really focusing on that outline, like so. Very good, okay? I'm gonna complete this, sand a little bit more, and then come back. All right, now before we button up this project, I did notice that we could use a little bit more definition around the eye mound from these closed eyes. So I'm gonna come around the top line here, especially emphasizing this outer eyelid with our 6mm number 9. Coming along here, really emphasizing the inside corner, and then extending that up, just trying to get the roundness of the eye mound. We kind of needed to pull some of that out. It looked a little flat, so do the same on this side. It's hard to see because I have to kind of be in the way to do it, but just like that, and then back in with the skew to take any of the hard edges left behind. Beautiful. And then come in with the sandpaper once again and treat it right. Treat it right. A little edge along the eyelid here as well. Won't hurt anything, just indicating the shape of the eyelid. Where the eyebrow hairs, or eyelid hairs exist, right along the edge, just a little ridge there. Try to stay out of the way of the camera as best I can. Just along that base ridge with the 1/8 inch number 9, or 11 in this case. Just like so. Very good. And a little bit of touch up with the sandpaper again. Before we do that, I'll use the skew to take that hard edge off and round the eyeball, because that's a lot of work for a 320 grit to do, is to round that much material off. So we'll just do it with our skew. All right, much better, much better. Just a few little details can just change a carving. That's what we love about carving, right? Is it's such a fluid, beautiful process whereby we get to create these awesome projects where if you just learn a few things, a few tips about it, or you just trial and error, you'll notice, you learn to see. That's the beautiful thing about it, is you can learn to see things more clearly than you ever have before. When you start carving, it teaches you to observe life in a way that I just think is so different than most other people. I love that, and that makes you a little weird. And I appreciate that weirdness. I like it. I like it a lot. So be weird, guys. Have fun with this project. I'm just going to do a little bit of touching up on this lower lid here because it looks like it's protruding a little bit more. Light sandpaper. I'll do a little zoom out once over so you can see where we're at with it. And per usual, I really appreciate it. I hope you guys appreciate it, because a lot of work goes into these videos, and so it always means a lot when you guys comment on the videos below, or you just comment in general on the school. It means a lot. I don't hear from everyone as much as on YouTube, because it's it's more of a learning place. It's not necessarily a spot in the comments below as YouTube is, where public comments are as encouraged. So I want to encourage you, is my point, to comment. All right. Anyway, thanks again for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.